Shalom. Parshat Vayeshev tracks the story of the enmity between Joseph and his brothers. And there are many twists and turns to the story, and there are many subplots, and there are many levels of understanding, but one thing that we know is that all of these developments were part of the plan of the Holy One, blessed be He, to bring the children of Israel to Egypt and to go through all that they had to go through as families, as a family, as a nation, in order to prepare for the redemption. And the story of Yosef and his brothers and the favoritism shown by Yaakov /Yisrael to Yosef doesn't really begin with Yosef's dreams. And it doesn't even begin with the special coat that Yisrael made for Yosef. If we were to really trace the beginning of the descent of Yosef into Egypt, setting the stage for everything that was to come out of this in Jewish history, really begins with one pivotal moment. And that is when we read that Yosef's brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. And in verse 13 we read, "And Israel said to Joseph, your brothers are pasturing in Shechem, are they not? Come, I will send you to them." He said to him, "Here I am." This is really a very amazing couple of verses. First of all, if Yisrael knew the enmity between Yosef and his brothers, why did he want to send him alone to them? What's really going on behind the scenes here? And our sages of blessed memory make a very interesting, enigmatic observation about these verses. Never really understood exactly what their emphasis is. And they talk about these words. They say, he said to him, Hineni, here I am. And our sages say, this is such an amazing thing that Yaakov said to himself. He said, you know how much they hate you, and yet you're willing to go? You say, Hineni, as if that was such a powerful moment and such an important moment for Yaakov himself to see. Notwithstanding the original question as to why Yaakov did this, which is another story altogether. There's some emphasis that our sages are making about the pivotal role and the central significance of the word Hineni, that Yosef answered Yaakov's call to go and check out his brothers and apparently to place himself in harm's way by saying the word Hineni, here I am. And we start to think and we realize that someone very recently in Sefer Bereshis also said the word Hineni. In fact, someone said the word Hineni 3 times. I refer, of course, to Avraham Avinu, to Yosef's great-grandfather, to Avraham at the time of the Akedah, when Hashem gave Avraham the instructions to go and take his one son, his only son that he loves, Yitzchak, and bind him. Avraham's first answer to the call was, Hineni, here I am. Later, on the way to Mount Moriah, Yitzchak turned to his father Avraham and said, here is the wood, and here is the fire, but where is the animal for the offering? First he called his father. He said, Father, and Avraham said, Hineni, here I am. And then later, the 3rd time, Avraham heard the voice of the angel, told him to stay his hand. He called Avraham, Avraham, and Avraham answered, Hineni, here I am. And this word, Hineni, here I am, is a signal. It's a word that denotes a large measure of mesirut nefesh, of readiness for self-sacrifice, of preparedness to go above and beyond the call of duty. This was the nature of Avraham Avinu's response to the Akedah, to every aspect of the Akedah. He was broadcasting with a tremendous resonance this word, Hineni, here I am. And now too, in Parshat Vayeshev, Yosef's response to Yaakov is the same, Hineni, here I am. It's without question. It's without condition. It even goes beyond the necessity to comprehend the order or to understand. It's without question. And so no wonder our sages are so amazed and put these words metaphorically in Yaakov's mouth. And Yaakov said, "You know, and yet you are so willing to go," because this was the signal of this mesirut nefesh, this readiness for self-sacrifice, this readiness to take upon oneself the divine calling and let the chips fall where they may. This attribute of being ready to respond to the call that Yosef knew was so important and so paramount in the unfolding of whatever role he was to play in this saga that he knew was to become that which would shape the destiny of the Jewish people. This was his answer, Hineni, and it was a direct throwback and recollection of the Hineni, of the here I am of Avraham Avinu. And that's what Yaakov understood and why he was so impressed that Yosef had this attribute. And so the major stamp, hallmark of this parsha is the background of what could easily be considered Yaakov's greatest test, and the event that was to shape the rest of his life in untold ways. The disappearance of, the sale of, the absence of Yosef. And the parsha begins with the words that Yaakov settled in the land of his father's sojourning, Vayeshev. And here too, our sages make a very pithy and widely misunderstood comment. They say, Yaakov desired to settle down in tranquility, and suddenly the fury of Yosef jumped up before him. Yaakov sought to retire, as it were, to settle down, but he was confronted with the entire incident of Yosef's sale, Yosef's disappearance. And our sages continue, and they say that Hashem said, what? It's not enough for the righteous that their place in the world to come is guaranteed? They also want tranquility in this world? And this is also a very enigmatic statement. What was of interest to Yaakov? Was he looking to retire? Was he looking to go to Florida and get some sun? Was he looking to have some rest and relaxation? What does it mean Yaakov desired to dwell in tranquility, but his plans for a quiet era of his golden years was interrupted by the fury of Yosef? Yaakov felt that he had paid his dues. Is that it? When God, as it were, paraphrases and says, what? It's not enough for the righteous? What kind of a nerve do they have that they not only have a place guaranteed in the world to come, but they also think that they can relax in this world for a moment? And perhaps Yaakov did need to learn in this life that he was living, as do we all, that it isn't our life, that everything that we do, every step of the way, is part of a massive cosmic design. Perhaps Yaakov did feel that after all of the tzarot, after all of the anguish and travail and trouble and payback that he had to deal with, the trouble with Esau, the trouble with Lavan, trouble with his two wives, and all the troubles, Dinah, and everything else that had transpired, the death of Rachel, and now finally, with his favorite son, he's going to settle down and finally get to relax. But no, God had other plans for him. So hard to understand this idea of what the sages are trying to say through God's words. It's not enough for the righteous to know that they have a place in the world to come, but they also think they should be relaxing now. And I can't help but connect it to another very enigmatic statement that our sages make, and this one at the conclusion of Tractate Brachot in the Talmud. And I think that the two ideas are somehow linked. For our sages make this statement, Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, Ein lahem menucha, they have no rest. Lo bi'olam hazeh, velo li'olam haba, not in this world and not in the next. Shenamar, because the verse says, Vayelchu michal el chal, they will go from strength to strength. Now, this is a very strange thing and difficult to comprehend, because we all have the idea, it's quite clear to us, that indeed the world to come is the place of rest, that there's no longer any advancement or movement spiritually in the world to come, but indeed it's a major principle of Torah thought that this is the world for doing, this is the world for accomplishment, and once we are finished with this world, that is the place of reward, and there's nothing further that one can do. And yet, our sages make this statement: Torah scholars have no rest, not in this world and not in the next world. As the verse states, they shall go from strength to strength. So, whoever a Torah scholar is, whoever this applies to, apparently there's no respite, there's no rest, there's constant movement, constant agitation, constant spiritual advancement, and a lack of complacency, and the necessity to somehow forge ahead, even in the next world, when ostensibly we were made to think that that's already another era and different rules apply, but apparently not. What happens if, when it comes to Yaakov and his desire to have some quiet, some peace and quiet, to settle down and enjoy his retirement years, and the lesson that he was to learn, no, your time is not your own. There are processes here that are being set into motion, wheels that are being set into motion, and you are living a life not only for yourself, but for your people, for the world, and there are great rectifications that must come about through everything that you do. What happens if we substitute Yaakov for every person to learn the lesson that one who wishes to live a life for Hashem, no, there's no retirement, there's no such thing as looking for some tranquility, because whatever He has in store for us, we have to be able to move with it, to go, to know that there can't be any room for complacency. And just when Yaakov thought he finally paid his dues, all of a sudden he's confronted with the fury of Yosef. It's just a question of catching everything that Hashem is throwing at him all the time, to be ready to move, to be causative, and to make this impression on the universe through every one of his virtuous deeds. So we can make that substitution and understand that there's a lesson here which is universal. There's no such thing really as deciding that we've had enough, and then we can interpolate that idea onto that enigmatic statement that our sages make in the Talmud and Masechet Brachot, that Torah scholars, and here let's substitute Torah scholars for people who wish to live for Hashem. That's really what it means here, Talmidei Chachamim. Not just Torah scholars in the classic sense of the word, but those who are committed to be making a difference in their lives, those who are constantly drawn towards godliness, who want to make a difference in the world, who want to make a difference to others, who want their time to be of value. Those people, they're never at rest. Not in this world and not in the next. And for those souls that are so on fire, as was Yaakov and as are we all, those that wish to make a difference in the world, that truly live for Hashem, they have no rest, not in this world and not even in the next, because they're constantly being drawn and advancing closer and closer to their goal, to be constantly living for Hashem, and to be constantly an emblem to others of consciousness of Hashem, both in this world and even moving on constantly and never resting in the next.